Jose and you're listening to MerrynPodcast.com. Today, we are very pleased to have with us once again Lynne McTaggart. Lynne McTaggart is the author of 5 books, including The Intention Experiment and the international bestseller The Field. She also runs worldwide Living the Field masterclasses and groups which are designed to help people adapt the ideas of the new scientific paradigm into their everyday lives. She was featured in the wildly successful cult classic movie What the Bleep Down the Rabbit Hole and has become an international spokesperson on alternatives to conventional medicine. So a very warm welcome back to Merryn Podcast, Lynne.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be back.
The last time we spoke, I think, was about 10 months ago. And I know you've got some of the very latest experiments now. Tell us what's going on.
Well, since March of 2007, we've been running these giant intention experiments, either with a group of people that I've been speaking in front of or through the internet and inviting thousands of readers around the world.
So thousands?
Oh, there are thousands that have participated in some of them. We've had, I think 10,000 was the highest number. We've had 7,000. We've had 80 countries. So it's been quite exciting.
Oh, yes.
We started out, though, with a group of 500. We decided to run a pilot test in front of a conference I was running in March of 2007. We started with a very simple target. With all of the experiments we did in 2007, we wanted to just see if we could have any kind of an effect. And I mean, when I first thought of involving people around the world in giant group intention experiments, I thought of, curing people from cancer.
Right.
But the scientists looked at me and said, listen, let's start with a leaf. And when I was disappointed, they said, they quoted from me, this was Gary Schwartz, he quoted from the movie Contact, when the Jodie Foster character wants to jump into a wormhole,
right.
The other scientist turns to her and says, baby steps, Ellie, baby steps.
Yes.
And that's what Gary says to me all the time, because we're trying something that's never been tried before.
Right.
And, we have to try to show that we can have an effect, any effect. So we started with a simple leaf, and we didn't have just one leaf, we had 2 leaves,
right.
a leaf and a control. And our group was asked to send intention to a leaf they would choose. The scientists didn't know which leaf it was going to be, and so they chose it. They flipped a coin, chose one of the leaves, and we showed it up on a webcast, so they could actually see the image of it.
All right.
And we asked them simply to send an intention to make it glow. And the reason we wanted to do that is that the science shows us that all living things emit a tiny current of light.
Yes.
And this is very, very subtle. And we thought if we could have an effect, any kind of an effect would show up as changing this light. So we asked them to increase the light, to make the leaf glow. And Dr. Schwartz had back in his laboratory in Tucson, where these leaves were. They were in Tucson, we were in London.
So distance makes no difference at all?
Well, it doesn't seem to. That's the interesting thing. So we send intention to this leaf, and after the scientists then put it in special equipment which can photograph it and count the light photon by photon, only after they'd done that did we unblind the study. And at that point, Dr. Gary Schwartz called me up and said, you won't believe this. I've got photos of the 2, and the leaf sent intention is truly glowing.
Really?
Yeah, and we were, and the other leaf is dark. And so we had actual physical evidence here that we could affect this light.
Yes.
So we ran that experiment a few times, and we were pretty encouraged. So then we wanted to move on to something a bit practical. So we thought, let's see if we can make, we know we can affect a plant. Let's see if we can make it grow faster.
Oh, really? Okay.
So we sent, we decided to get a bunch of seeds, and we arranged them into 4 packets. This is, again, with the University of Arizona, although it's not the only lab I'm working with. But they have generously been involved in many of our first experiments. They had 4 batches of seeds, and we, again, I was speaking before a group, this time in Sydney, Australia, and I thought, this will be interesting. Let's see if this group of 600 can send an intention to seeds back in Tucson, Arizona,
Yeah.
thousands of miles away, and affect them. So this time we didn't just have one set of controls, we had 3. So we had experimental seeds and 3 sets of controls. The audience again chose which seeds we were going to take, A, B, C, or D groups. And we sent intention to one of the groups, and then as soon as we finished, the scientists, again not knowing which seeds they were, planted all 4 sets of seeds and just monitored them to see which ones sprouted earliest and grew highest. And only after they'd finished that did I unblind it, and they found the seeds sent intention sprouted earliest and grew highest.
Oh, wonderful. My
So
God.
we have run that now over the Internet with thousands of people from 80 countries around the world.
Yes.
So in that case, we show the seeds on the Internet. We choose it ahead of time, and we show a set of seeds over the Internet. The scientists don't see it, and they do exactly the same. They plant them afterward and then measure them. We've run it before a group in Rhinebeck, New York, a group in Austin, Texas, and a group in South Carolina. And we've had stunning effects each time. And in fact, the ones in South Carolina, the seeds grew twice as high as the control.
Well, then let me ask you, were there more people there?
No, it had nothing to do with numbers.
Really?
Nothing to do with numbers.
So
what
the
it did have to
smallest
do
group,
with
though,
was
is like
experience.
Oh.
The group in South Carolina were all experienced healing touch practitioners, and they were more experienced intenders, basically.
You said that the gamma wave frequency is much higher when there's peak focus, a peak attention.
Yes, yes.
And that there's a way for people to train themselves this way, to be able to focus more intently, that anyone can learn to do this, right?
Yes. I mean, one of the things I wanted to learn is how do you become an efficient intender?
You're right.
I not only looked at the science, I looked at the activities of many intention masters and to see what sorts of techniques they used. What I've discovered is basically that's the only thing between us and an intention master is practice.
I see.
And they use a number of different things, although they have individual differences. I spoke to many, many intention masters like Buddhist monks, master healers, Qigong masters, and all of them create some sort of focused mind.
Yes.
They start off with meditation, and as you rightly say, the brain initially slows down, but then it begins to speed up to a gamma state, which is a state of a kind of peak attention.
Yes.
So it's a body working to peak experience. I looked at that and tried to figure out how an ordinary layperson could get into a state of rapt attention, basically.
Yes,
and it seems to be that the easiest method, and the one beloved of many intention masters, is a thing called mindfulness, which is staying in the present and being aware with all of your 5 senses without judgment. So you turn off your mind, the rattling thing that's going on all the time, judging, thinking, remembering, projecting, and you just experience what's going on with all of your 5 senses.
My gosh, this sounds just like Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now.
Well, exactly. And it's just a different kind of message because intention masters through the centuries have understood that being powerfully present is a way to focus the mind.
Yes.
And so from there, I then suggest state implanting an intention, some sort of specific intention, and to be highly, highly specific. We found with our intention experiments that we had a larger effect the more specific we were. With our first seed experiment, we just sent an intention for the seeds to have enhanced growth.
All right.
And then that we had an effect. But then we started saying, making a more specific intention, that the seeds will sprout at least 3 centimeters by the 4th day of growing.
Oh, I see.
And we had a larger effect. So it was very interesting just to compare all of the 6 groups and just to see what we're doing. And we're collectively putting this all together to submit this material.
This is incredible. Didn't you work with Bill Tiller on something? Or I know he was doing that too.
He was doing a kind of a thing called, well, I've called it a black box experiment.
Yes.
Which is he would have 4 meditators embed a thought into a little piece of electronic equipment. Send that box to another lab thousands of miles away and have them turn it on and play it next to some chemicals to see if he could affect a chemical reaction or, in some way affect a process through those thoughts. For instance, in one of his experiments, and I recount it in the intention experiment, he sent an intention to make fruit flies grow 15% faster than normal.
Right.
And he had an effect. And they had, and this is a really incredible idea that we can embed a thought in a little piece of electronic equipment containing a crystal.
That is
and that
amazing.
this can send a message, basically, to change a biological process. That's what he did. I haven't worked directly with him on an intention experiment, but I really value his contribution. I mean, he's done an amazing amount of research, and his black box experiments just lead us to all kinds of interesting new conclusions.
Absolutely. And aren't you going to work with the Russian Konstantin? I can't pronounce his other name.
I have worked with him. We've run 2 experiments already.
About water? You're going to do something about water?
Yes. Well, we've run 2 experiments on water, and they've been amazing. We wanted to see, these are kind of precursors to some really amazing experiments we're planning for 2008. The water experiments were just to see if we could, again, affect a physical process with water. So what he tried to do is he has special equipment that, again, measures light emissions. And he's found that there are what he calls photonic emissions even from water. And there are certain things that measure its structure, its ability to bond together, etc. And so he wanted to see if we could change that. So once again, the first thing we did was to just try to do something that was very much like Masaru Emoto's idea, which was to send love to the water.
Yes.
So we all sent love to this water, and we found we had a profound effect on its light emissions.
Oh, my goodness.
So then we decided, okay, let's try just sending a specific intention. Let's make the water glow. So we did that, and we also had some control water, and we found that we had a profound effect on the water, and we didn't have an effect on the control water. And, imagine this, too, that we're sending it via a picture on the Internet that my readers are looking at on our website. And we're affecting one vial and not the other vial. So it just brings up all kinds of extraordinary possibilities of the fact that the mind can somehow focus on this target and have an effect on something that is thousands of miles away.
That's amazing. And if you could start purifying the water, because here in New York or in America, I don't know whether you know, but we found that there's a lot of chemicals and drugs in the water now.
Interesting you should mention that, because that's exactly the next experiment we're doing. I'm planning to do some experiments with Dr. Rustam Roy, who is a professor emeritus at Pennsylvania State University, and he is probably one of the world's experts on water, and so is his lab is the most prestigious lab on water. He's a professor of materials science, but he's much more of a traditional scientist who has been looking at water and all of its properties for many, many years.
Right.
And what he's looking at now is, with me, is we decided, okay, let's see if we can purify it. What can we do? What can we do with water? So we are going to try to mutate bacteria in the water. There have been some very interesting experiments where people have projected intention to water and changed certain E. coli bacteria they've mutated it. Bacteria mutate very easily. And in this case, it was to mutate them from one state of an E. coli bacteria to another. And they had an effect.
My gosh.
So we thought, okay, let's try this, but let's take some, bacteria that usually injures humans, who usually isn't very healthful for humans, and let's see if we can turn it into good bacteria that's very healthful. So that's the first thing we're going to try to do. And, of course, if we can do that, that has enormous implications.
Absolutely enormous.
We're also going to be trying to affect the structure of water, and that also has that has huge implications, because it has implications for everything from homeopathy to the messaging that we have in the human body, which is 80% water, to things like plants, which are nearly 100% water. The food we eat, nearly 100% water. So that has enormous ramifications. And I think now Masaru Emoto has been contacting me because he'd very much like me to do an intention experiment.
Oh, yeah.
He would like more science backing up many of his theories, because he's done demonstrations of this, but not under what is laboratory-type conditions.
Right.
So that's the kind of thing that we're going to be doing together.
Obviously, from what you're saying, you can take a very small vial and then you can affect a much larger body of water.
We're looking at many, many types of studies of water, because water has so many implications. So that's quite a really interesting one that we're looking at. But our biggest and most ambitious project has to do with what we're calling a live aid type peace intention experiment.
Oh, is this the one that you're going to collaborate with Deepak Chopra in?
Not only Deepak Chopra.
Yes.
We started out really just saying, hey, it would be really nice to try to send intention to lower violence in a number of hotspots around the world.
Right.
And there is a kind of precursor to this in experiments that have been done by the transcendental meditation groups, who have looked at what happens when a number of meditators are in a particular area.
Yes, John Haglin's, he's working on that, isn't he?
Exactly.
Yes.
And they found that over many studies, that when a certain percentage of meditators are in the area, the crime rate seems to go down.
Right.
So that's quite interesting. That's been quite interesting. But they don't involve intention. They just involve a certain mind state.
Oh.
So, they never sent intention to lower the violence. They just said, look, if a certain number of people are in a good state and they're regularly meditating, that will create a kind of coherence that infects the whole area.
Oh, I see. So now you're taking a step further.
Yeah, I'm saying, okay, let's see if we send out a specific intention to lower the crime rate. Can we do this? And so I started out by mentioning this on a show like this with Deepak Chopra. And he said, wow, I really like this idea. Let's get the Alliance for New Humanity to be involved with this. And so I spoke to them and his group, and they love this idea, and so they want to get involved. And then I started talking to the Association for Global New Thought, which is an umbrella organization over many of the New Thought churches. They wanted to get involved.
Okay.
Suddenly, then I spoke to Unity churches, the global group for Unity churches, and they want to get involved. And then so it went on with this. Everyone is wanting to be involved.
So this is your global laboratory.
This is my global laboratory coming true. So I'm really excited, but there are many, many, many challenges to putting together this kind of a project.
Yes.
The first one is, of course, a scientific panel, which we're trying to assemble now, who will be involved in carrying out all of these experiments and designing the protocol. And looking for what kind of statistics they need, because they'll be looking for the violence levels before and after intention, and working out how long we should send the intention.
Oh, right, of course.
All those kinds of things.
I mean, does one have to keep it going for months and months, and then the violence stays stable, or would it be a continuous, like different groups continuously taking over, and keeping it going for perhaps years?
This is the question. We don't know. We don't really know what the answer is, and that's what we have to test. Up to date, all of our intention experiments have been only 10 minutes. We've just sent 10 minutes of intention.
Really?
It's had those kinds of profound effects. So, we may stay with 10 minutes and see if 10 minutes is all it takes.
Yes.
Or we may try it again. But there is a bigger challenge, even than trying to work out the scientific, protocol, and that is trying to figure out how to create a website that will take on this many people.
Right.
I mean, one of the biggest challenges we've had is, up until now, we've had people stay on the website, come to the website on a particular time, all at the same time, and send an intention during that very focused moment, those 10 minutes. And what we've had to do is we've been through 3 different kinds of web designers to plan this, because we found that with our first intention experiment, we had so many people wanting to get on that the site crashed. So for this kind of a giant experiment, either we decide that people don't come on the web, or we, maybe we do it via something else, or we attach to something like Google. So we're working on all of those ideas, and luckily we have some months to do that.
Obviously it's workable, and this is pretty amazing, actually, Lynn, what you're talking about.
If we can demonstrate it, I think, first of all, with a team of scientists who includes some standard-type scientists, so that people can't say, oh, this is just woo-woo stuff. I think that we'll find that we've got some evidence to really show that this works.
Yes.
But then also, we can then push the boat out for other things. Now, the other thing we're planning with the University of Arizona is we're building an ecosphere, which is a beautiful little spherical, like Gaia. It's like a little glass terrarium.
Oh, is this your mini Gaia experiment?
Yes.
Okay.
And now we're in the process of building that.
Yes.
And that will have some plants and some little animals in it. And then with these experiments, we're going to try to lower the temperature or change the CO2 levels inside.
Oh, my gosh.
And, of course, if we can do that, that shows the power of thought to, affect our ecological condition at the moment, to change our temperature and lower global warming or to clean up pollution.
This is really amazing. Now, what about negative intention? Because we're talking about positive intention here.
The thing is, people think of intention and they only think of positive intention. They think there is no such thing as negative intention, or negative intention is not as powerful as positive intention. But that's not true at all. The studies I've looked at, and I've looked at the science of positive as well as negative intention, show that negative intention is every bit as powerful, if not more powerful, than positive intention.
Yes, probably because when it's negative, people have a lot of anger and frustration in there where they really direct that energy in a forceful way.
Exactly. And I think that the studies show that negative intention, when used by a Qigong master or some sort of master of intention, can be beautifully and maliciously targeted. So I think that it's first of all wrong to think that only happy thoughts are powerful.
Right.
Negative thoughts are just as powerful. They're used many times on things like, in the laboratory anyway, on bacteria. Because, you obviously can't test to send a negative intention to a human being.
No.
You might kill them. But there've certainly been many studies showing that bacteria can be inhibited, it can be killed, all those sorts of things with negative intention. Negative intention is also used with illness. I mean, many people like to use visualization if, say, they have cancer.
Oh, right.
And, of course, they send an intention to kill the cancer in some way.
Yes,
they'll imagine that there's a battlefield going on, and their cells are gobbling up the cancer. And, of course, that's a negative intention.
Of course, they're killing the cancer cells.
Exactly. The other point I wanted to make, too, is that about negative intention, is that we think of intention as a mental oomph, a very strong mental push where you project your thoughts in a very focused way. And I agree, that is what intention is. But people don't really recognize that just the thoughts running through your head, just the flotsam and jetsam going through your head can also become your life's intention.
Whatever thoughts they have a few years later or a decade later, that materializes if they keep constantly playing it through their brain pattern, their mind.
Exactly. So what I do and I do this in our seminars now, is work with people on recognizing what their life's intention is, what they are sending out to the universe, and how they can change that message.
Of course.
How do they change in their life story? What is the inference of their intention, and how can they change that life story?
That's very useful now because there's a lot of fear with people. So the future is doom, gloom, this is going to happen, and atomic warfare, and all sorts of things are going on now with this, that people are building a kind of energy field of this.
Yes, exactly. There is a terrible energy field around the idea of apocalypse.
Yeah, that's right. I read something where you talk about powering up, which is building up one's energy field first, before intentionally concentrating. I know we talked about mindfulness, but what do you actually mean by powering up? Is there a short, quick way of doing this? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, when I say powering up, I mean a program of techniques that I've distilled from intention masters and other types of people, and also the science, to see what works best. And it is really about the right mind states, the right emotional states, how the kind of specificity you should do, the right time, the right place. I found that there are all sorts of things like that affect how well you are with intention.
Do you know, it might be, just throwing it out here, it might be interesting for you to do like a mini little pamphlet book or something with just that. sometimes people get overwhelmed with a lot of facts or reading a whole book to get to the end of the book to do that. So
well,
maybe...
funny you should say that. We have got one.
Really?
Yeah, we have an intention experiment handbook, which is,
fantastic.
it's a companion, and it just looks at how to power up and how to keep track of your intention.
So when is that coming out, or is it
That's out? It's been out since the book was out, and it's available on our website.
We'll take your website, and I'll send people to get that book. That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yes, yes. Well, what it does is it distills, what I've said in the book, but the book also has information about, the science links into the powering up section of the book, as it does link into other chapters that suggest how to use intention in your life or how to participate in the big intention experiments.
Oh, that's marvelous.
Well, it's been a global bestseller. We've been really gratified that people have really come together on the intention experiment. And I think what's been most exciting has been what people have said, which is that basically people have, all understand about the idea of manifestation.
Yes.
But people are a little bit tired of manifesting just for me.
Yes.
Of just saying, it's about getting a bigger car or a better job or something like that. That maybe there's a better way to use our thought. And that was really what I was trying to do, because I felt, well, if we do have this amazing power, then surely we can use this to clean up the planet.
Absolutely. You're taking it to a higher level. You're taking it to the level it really should be on. We are all connected, and mystics will tell us that. Each person helping the other, everybody. And that is a very important step.
Well, thank you. Well, we're, it's just very exciting for us. And, of course, one never knows. You never know what you're going to find. When you try to do this kind of science, you have to be able to go blind and just sort of travel without a compass. And so we've done this, and our experience and the results have really exceeded all of our expectations.
And of course, now anyone doing these experiments, and now you've come out with the results, they're feeling empowered.
Well, that was the point too, is the whole idea of showing this is, if this is what we can do, if this is how powerful we are in a lab experiment, imagine what you can go out and do in your world.
Yes.
And that's hopefully the message.
There's one thing, Lynn, that we did touch on last time. You were saying how the past affected the now, and you said something I thought was really fascinating. You said how the future affects the now. Can you just expand a little bit on that? I found that a fascinating concept.
I think it's probably a really, really hard thing to think about.
It is.
We think about time as this forward-going projection, a one-way arrow from cradle to grave, and it's very difficult for us to think of it as anything other than that. But there was a study recently by an Israeli professor who wanted to debunk alternative medicine. So he wanted to come up with what he thought was going to be the most outrageous study he could think of. It was a study of patients with a very, very serious illness, blood sepsis, blood infection.
Right.
Divided them in half, sent prayer to one of the two groups, and then calculated how well they did. And he found that the patients who were sent prayer did better in every way. They left the hospital sooner, they had fewer side effects, all of that. But there was an interesting aspect to the study, which was the patients had been in the hospital in the years 1992 to 94. Lebovici had done his praying, he had carried out his study in the year 2000, 6 to 8 years later.
Oh, my gosh.
So he was sending intention, in a sense, back in time to affect these patients after they'd already left the hospital.
Oh, my gosh.
So impossible to get our heads around.
Yes,
but what was going on here? He was studying hospital records after the fact. And he was doing this to try to show that you can't use the scientific method to look at alternative medicine. It's too weird. But actually what he ended up proving, in a way, was that we can go back and change the past. Now, many people have done other kinds of studies of what is known as retro intention. And that is sending an intention to affect something that's already finished. And they found, doing very, very controlled studies, that actually those things are changed compared to things that are controlled. They've done it with machines. They've done it with all kinds of, with traffic traveling through Vienna, all sorts of things.
This is amazing.
It is amazing.
This is beyond amazing. This is really very hard, like you say, to get our heads around, because if this is possible, we can then go back and maybe change the Holocaust or something.
What I think is going on is this. I think that its intention, first of all, time as an arrow is way too limited a thought.
Right.
That's just a human construct. And that we try to create time and experience time in that way, but time is much more like one great big now.
Yes.
So what they found is that if you can send an intention to something that supposedly already happened, what's going on is that your intention, in a sense, is traveling to the moment that that thing was generated. So when that present was unfolding, and affects it as it's unfolding. So it's not like you're changing the past or what would have you're not changing what did happen.
No.
You're changing what would have happened in the first place.
You're getting right to the root of it.
Exactly. So if you're changing what happened in the first place. So that, I think, has a lot of interesting possibilities for us. The idea that perhaps, and this needs to be tested really outside the laboratory, maybe an intention sent today could change the whole nature of a past relationship. We, with our constricted view of time, need to open up our minds to the possibilities and then test them.
Oh, Lynn, this is so interesting.
It's very strange and weird and wacky idea.
It really is. So will you please come back again and keep us updated as your experiments go along?
I would love to.
And also now, if you can give us your website and your information on your courses and workshops so people can just tap in.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I have so many websites. They can, first of all, look at the Intention website, and that is www.theintentionexperiment.com. And they should also look at our Living the Field website, which is livingthefield.com, and that is all about how to take these ideas into your life.
Right.
And finally, we have a new website, which is theintentionworkshops.com, and that has material all about our latest Living with Intention workshop, which is, we're running one in London, we're running 4 in America, and 1 in Holland.
Oh.
And so that's theintentionworkshops.com.
And to read book reviews on the field in the Intention Experiment, please visit www.merlionnews.com. And to hear these podcasts with Lynne McTaggart, please go to merlionpodcast.com. This is Merryn Jose, and thank you for listening to Merlion Podcast.